Hunger in the city. Some time later, the king of Syria marched with his whole army against Samaria, the capital city of Israel. They camped outside, letting nothing in or out of the city. Food soon became scarce inside Samaria. There was nothing left to buy. The very rich people even paid huge sums to get hold of a donkey's head to cook for dinner. The poor people just went hungry. The king walked around the walls talking to his people. When he discovered how desperate they were for food, he was beside himself with worry. "I blame Elisha," he said. "I'll kill him." Elisha, sitting in his house, knew all that the king was thinking. He was waiting for the royal visitor to arrive. "God has brought all this trouble on us," the king complained to Elisha. "Why doesn't he do something?" "I promise you," Elisha told the king, "by this time tomorrow, God says the best wheat and barley will be sold in Samaria for 1/5 the price that you have been paying for the rubbish on sale today." The king's chief officer laughed out loud. "That couldn't happen if God sent barley raining down from heaven," he said. Elisha looked at him hard. "What God has said will happen," he promised. "You will see it for yourself, but because you don't believe what God can do, you will not eat any of that food." Good news. There were 4 men outside the gates of Samaria, even worse off than the citizens inside. These Israelites were not allowed into the city because they were suffering from a dreaded disease and had to stay away from towns and people. "We shall die of hunger," one said. "We'd be no better off if we got into the city," the second remarked. "Hey, why don't we go across to the Syrians?" the third suggested. "I know they might kill us outright, but then again, they might give us something to eat." "We shouldn't be worse off," said the fourth agreed, "and we might save our lives." It was growing dark when all 4 set out for the Syrian camp. They crept along stealthily, on the lookout for a friendly Syrian soldier, but they saw no one and heard nothing. Cautiously, they looked inside the first tent they came to. There was not a Syrian to be seen, but there was food and wine in plenty on the table. They set to ravenously, eating and drinking to their heart's content. Then, with great sighs of satisfaction, they came slowly out of that tent and looked inside the next one. It was empty too. Now they were no longer hungry. They noticed all the other things that were lying around, silver and gold, and rich embroidered robes. They rubbed their hands together with glee. They had never had such luck. The whole camp was deserted, and they could help themselves to anything they wanted. Then one of them paused. "Wait a bit," he said. "We should not be carrying on like this. We've got good news for our people, and we're keeping it to ourselves." Quickly they hurried back to Samaria and roused the guards. The king got up from his bed and hurried to see what all the fuss was about. At first he did not believe the 4 men's story. "It's a trick," he said. "The Syrians want to lure us out so that they can take the city." But he agreed to send a small band of soldiers to investigate. They found everything just as the 4 had reported. God had rescued Israel. The Syrians, thinking they had heard sounds of a great army advancing against them, had fled for their lives. God's word through Elisha came true. Syrian food supplies were brought in to sell at the city gate. The king ordered his chief officer to control the crowds that came to buy. But in the mad excitement to get food, someone knocked him to the ground, and he died in the crush of people. Troubles in Judah and Israel. Secret mission. King Ahab of Israel was dead, but his wicked queen Jezebel still lived. King Joram, their son, was no better than his parents. God told Elisha that the time had come to end the rule of this wicked family. He sent for a young prophet. "Take this jar of oil," he said, "and go to the army camp. Find Jehu, one of the army officers. Get him on his own and anoint him king. Then flee for your life." Elisha knew only too well what would happen to the prophet if King Joram found out what he had done. The young man arrived at the camp and found the officers sitting out in the open discussing military plans. "I have a message for you, sir," he said to Jehu. When Jehu took him indoors, the prophet anointed him with oil and announced, "God proclaims you king over Israel." Then the young man made off as fast as he could, and Jehu went back to the other officers, his mind whirling. "Is everything all right?" they asked. What did that crazy chap have to say? Can't you guess? Jehu asked. He felt as if the secret must be written all over his face. We have no idea, they answered. I am to be king, Jehu told them. A great cheer went up. The officers spread their cloaks on the top step and made Jehu stand there. Jehu is king, they shouted. The crazy driver. Jehu lost no time. He and his followers got into their chariots and set off for Jezreel, driving fast. King Joram was resting quietly in his summer palace at Jezreel. He had been wounded in battle while fighting against Syria with the help of his nephew, King Ahaziah of Judah. The guard on top of the watchtower at the city's gate saw Jehu's cavalcade in the distance and reported it to the king. Send a messenger to find out if they are friends or enemies, Joram ordered. When a messenger on horseback galloped up, Jehu would tell him nothing. But soon the guard on watch called out, I know who's coming. Only one man drives as madly as that. It's Jehu. Get my chariot ready at once, Joram ordered. Then he and King Ahaziah of Judah rode out to meet Jehu. Are you coming in peace? King Joram called out as the chariots drew alongside. How can there be peace while you and your mother Jezebel rule over Israel? Jehu replied. It's treason, Ahaziah, Joram shouted. Swiftly they wheeled their chariots around to return to Jezreel. But Jehu shot an arrow with all his force. It struck Joram in the back and pierced through to his heart, killing him instantly. Then Jehu pursued and killed Ahaziah, king of Judah, too. Quickly news was brought to Jezebel that Jehu had killed her son. She did her hair carefully, put on eyeshadow, and looked for Jehu from the upstairs window of the palace. Jehu's chariot soon came cluttering up. You murderer! Jezebel shouted down. What are you doing here? Jehu did not answer her. Is there anyone on my side? He called up. A few cautious heads appeared at the window. Throw her down, he ordered in a loud voice. Without a word, some of the palace servants took hold of Jezebel and threw her from the window, killing her outright. Jehu, now king, showed no mercy. He killed every member of Ahab's family and many more people besides. He believed he was God's servant, getting rid of Baal worship in Israel, but God was not pleased with Jehu's cold and brutal vengeance.